Hello everyone, a bit of a different video today as I have this tradition that every 100 videos I make one about the channel, commenting on it, and also opening a bit up with you as well that maybe interests you. I mean, talking about the channel, what my plans are, how Schwerpunkt is faring, and also taking a chance naturally to thank you a lot as the channel progresses, as it, it was awful, not just because I upload videos, but also because you subscribe. I just from some time I have now more subscribers than videos. I have around 320 subscribers, and I want to thank you all really heartily for participating to Schwerpunkt, also for commenting, and I thank you. I mean, I thank really everyone that stops by, watches my video, leaves a like, even without subscribing. I must say, I actually never subscribe to any channel myself, not because of any aversion for it, but just, I feel I don't have the time to follow regularly, and I know it's plenty of people who actually follow channels essentially without being subscribed, and I do it kind of all the time. There is only a bunch of channels that I used actually, because now I don't do it anymore, kind of regularly, or at least even after some time, wondering how's that channel doing and going to see what's on. It happens now. I'm kind of a regular but daily YouTuber watcher, not just a content producer. And today I would like to discuss kind of the achievements, also about the criticism that is very important for me. I must say that given my poor means of content creation, I receive relatively a few amount of critique relatively to my contents, and this is actually it's good because I realize that there are 320 people who, I don't know, maybe some of them are the same people who criticize me in a way or in another for certain things we'll discuss now, but it's as if there is someone out there who is interested and gets over the fact that objectively and my videos are very long, sometimes are very difficult to kind of follow for this reason, because I just said, for instance, I don't have the time, so I guess many of you don't have as well to watch my average video in all of its length. And this is one point I will comment later, but also my linguistical skills that are relatively poor, especially for being a kind of communicator here. I objectively don't know English excessively well. Also, it's partly the way I speak, really, this kind of stopping and mumbling like that it's annoying, I realize. It's really how I speak also in real in my native tongue. So this is on me as a person, not just because my English sucks. However, I'm really trying to take a C1 certificate at this point, so I think I'm intelligible enough given my standards for being understood. I realize that rightfully, as it should be statistically, I get more criticism from people who are actually native tongue, because it's actually obvious. When even when I hear people, foreigners, speaking my own languages, and you hear a very heavy accent, or you don't like how it's pronounced, I realize it's kind of annoying. It's normal as a reaction, and I don't want to say that therefore there is a more criticism coming from certain countries, but I think it's kind of natural that this happens. At the same time, it's full of people that, welcome to the world of the non-tongue non-mother tongue speakers that kind of understand each other, sometimes even not in a language that is different from both of them, and that therefore makes it easier for them actually to connect, to bond, not knowing their respective language. And this happens like when there are people who learn a language and they do it very properly, so that they know it at a very advanced level. Sometimes they are not understood by other people maybe speaking that language, because maybe they're too advanced. I don't know how I sound really from the external. I realize I'm probably intelligible because otherwise nobody would be following me. But I realize also I repeat things a lot. I think it over, and I realize it's annoying. So I'm sorry for that. I'm trying to work on it. Well, admit I'm not really trying. It's just it's not even a matter. I could objectively speak better, especially if I had a text. I could read directly. Everything it would be kind of easier. But at the same time, this is really my way of speaking. So the real problem is that when I make a video that is more than 1 hour long, and I have to tell a lot of, I get lost into certain branches of the conversation, certain ramifications. However, there is one thing that actually is important because some of you do not, and this is this is really the point. It's normal for me to open a lot of parentheses and to get lost into these digressions and so on, but there is one thing I believe it's actually positive. That is, I always close this parenthesis. I always close the cycle, and exactly because I do it for the whole video. I mean, everything I say in a video has kind of its place in it. It's true that sometimes I divert from the original track at a point you say, well, maybe this part was not necessary, but actually thinking about the daily topic, I think it's important to provide the followers with this kind of extra information that help to reconnect a bit everything. And this is also a bit the aim of the channel as such, as a structure. I mean, Schwerpunkt is conceived not really in a particularly orderly way, because I follow, I have actually a kind of cyclical topic choice that I basically start in cycles over and over again. So there is a kind of order from that point of view. I've got the playlists that kind of order a little bit the contents. Now I'll probably have to create others, but also in here I wouldn't like to make it too messy for the for whoever arrives wants to identify certain but the point is, it has to do that, therefore the way I speak is really influenced also by what I believe Schwerpunkt is really about. Schwerpunkt is not an informative channel like those were, conceived from, with a lot of projection behind, this idea that the video is started by a team of people who, I'm a single person doing this. I have no time to project everything, and therefore the best way for me to deliver the contents I want to deliver is the way I do, and it has to do also with the nature of the contents, because the contents I discuss, as you know, are kind of relatively complex. I try not to make it complicated. Sometimes the complication is also beyond my actual expertise, because I can't at least I present complicated topics only to leave the audience with a kind of, stay open, do not fix yourself on a tunnel vision. Be aware that there are several points of view, that history is an extremely complex thing, and there is not really a unique interpretation, or better, obviously reality. I believe that reality exists. I believe the truth does exist, but the whole thing is how to reach this. I mean, how to orientate yourself into your direction. We can't reach the truth, which is too often very far from the range of our poor gnoseological means. However, it's still important, and history is a very is a very useful field in this, and very I don't know how to say that, but history provides a very good example to show how reality is complex. I realize many people approach history as if it was a story that is marked by true things, that sheer facts that are intrinsically real and evident and checkable. But actually it's not really like that. I mean, history is, even properly from an etymological point of view, the act of the research. So what you get there is not really history, but it's rather the story. You're told, and the narrative that is behind that story. So we all need a narrative to tell history or parts of history, but this doesn't mean that that's the unique narrative. And most of the times, actually, history is based on the sources. So you can say, well, of course, but the sources are kind of a cornerstone. Yes, of course they are. You can't make history if you don't use the sources. So one thing is history, one thing is fantasy. But however, there are several different interpretations. You can have also the same sources that are not easy at all to understand. And I haven't stressed this excessively much. I mean, on Schwerpunkt, I've dedicated myself mostly now to telling stories, in fact, not the actual process of the research. There are just certain videos from which I read, in fact, from straight from the sources. That's especially when I talk about battles that are kind of especially ancient battles, but also medieval ones, into which you have kind of a few sources and you can essentially look at them without too many difficulties. I mean, if you have the kind of the linguistical understanding, the knowing on the historical background, if you have certain, I mostly talk about military history, so also in there, the history of the art of warfare is pretty much diachronic, which means you can actually look at it also not really extrapolated from the context, but looking at how objectively humans have fought all over history and kind of deriving some military logic from our knowledge you have accumulated about it. Excuse me, I drink a little bit. But the point I'm trying to make, I guess, is you can't discuss the topics I discuss seriously if you don't spend a lot of time talking about them, if you don't make many premises, if you don't introduce the topic, if you do not make certain criticism and consideration. I mean, everybody is kind of able to make a extremely compact video that lasts even maybe, let's say, 10 minutes, and being able to condensate everything. But I think that much of these videos are not really interiorized and not really do not really make you think more than much. I realize quite positively from one hand that people are apparently more interested in history today, at least in the Western world, but not only, than they were before. At least kind of they're more aware that there is more to know. And this is a very important point, because essentially history is born out of curiosity of the individual. The historian is just a guy, it's not a machine, it's someone who has an interest and looks at history because she's fascinated by this or that. I also have my particular taste. I'm kind of a polymologist, but also like very much the Middle Ages. That's because objectively I'm a medievalist, but not only, but because I believe that it's such a fantastic aging time. But I don't, from the other hand, I realize that many people approach history in this kind of very quick, simplistic approach, for which they want to know, facts. Sometimes I Google certain historical topics, certain historical subjects, and I got surprised when Google gives you, all the various possible answers, the possible questions you might have searched for, so that you don't type it all again. And increasingly, I've noticed something a few years ago. I think either I didn't notice, or maybe it was still already there. I don't know. But that people want to know. Let's say, I make an example: the French Revolution and facts. I mean, many people Google, I don't know, I want to know this X historical event, facts, as if, the reason kind of, it's very fascinating, anthropologically speaking, to look at it, because it's as if people were aware, first of all, that first of all, there is an anxiety behind this question. There is an insecurity. Because if you are searching for facts, you're assuming that it doesn't take just to Google the name of that specific historical event. You actually also want to know the facts, knowing that, and this is actually positive, being aware that on the internet, not everything you read is kind of facts. And also here, it would be interesting to explain what is a fact, for instance, what is an opinion, what is a belief, what is an evidence, what is knowledge in itself. I've also planned, now that certain, also for personal reasons, such videos are becoming a little bit demanding, to sometimes make every once in a while, actually not to bore you excessively, if certain videos dedicated to this. I mean, for instance, what is an opinion? And I don't mean it just historically speaking, I mean just also from a philosophical point of view. How should we present ourselves? Because ultimately, history is, it's not just, I don't know, people seem to treat history like kind of a weird story about the past that somehow is there because, they realize the implication with the present, but it's kind of something else. But actually, history behind, at least in its results, it's in its context of research, is indeed the history of the whole humanity. This is something that is often overlooked. I don't want to make history, this idea, history dominates everything, history is the most important subject. No, I believe history is important as much as, I don't know, engineering or philosophy or medicine. I don't believe that, but the point is that history is, potentially at least, and that depends on what the historian does, so what the individual actually gets in there, is what do you want to cover with history? Because take me, as we've seen, I make only certain types of topics, so I kind of focus on kind of a specialization in here. I know fairly nothing about the history of fashion, for instance. I don't know I don't know. I know it's plenty of university classes about it, but I have no idea. I've never learned about that. There are also many historical parts of history, periods of times and spaces that I've never studied. That's also pretty obvious. So history also depends on, as I was saying before, on what kind of interest you're kind of driven by, because at that point it's your personal choice. And the more you go on, even now maybe I'm looking at from a kind of a university / academic perspective, but everybody can learn history in any way today. History is just a click away from every phone, every internet access, and it's everybody could know and get interested seriously into history. So people searching for facts tells you that there is a general awareness that history is kind of manipulated sometimes, that there are certain wrong interpretations, and I believe that everybody, at least every of you that is come across with Schwerpunkt and now is listening to me, I don't know for which reason, but is being confronted with the with the problem of wanting to answer a kind of a complex historical question, or maybe even a simple historical question, but let's say a specific question that for which there is no easy answer. Because I don't know, when I want to know where a character kind of was born or died, I googled that, I find it in Wikipedia. It's quite easy. You have that. For instance, I use Wikipedia quite a lot. Actually, not for Schwerpunkt, but even for my work. Sometimes I come across, I don't know, a name or a place in my work during my research, and I say, oh, what's that? And usually I come across Wikipedia, and Wikipedia is not evil. It's not pure evil. It's full of kind of interesting contents. Actually, I must say that the English Wikipedia is kind of has a relatively good quality of historical contents proper. It's kind of well controlled. The information is kind of reliable, but of course you don't find deeper reality. There was a meme I've seen somewhere that was comparing essentially Wikipedia to tip of the iceberg, and the submerged part of the iceberg would be books, so if you want to know more, just learn from books. Objectively, you can learn lots of things also from the internet in general. Definitely books have pros and cons as well. It's obvious that they provide more qualitative information, but first of all, not all books are alike. There are many books that are kind of garbage. Other that are excellently good. It doesn't depend on the length. It doesn't depend on when it was written. It really depends on what that book is really about and how who wrote it kind of was competent and intelligent enough and well intentioned. So never be close to certain parts of knowledge, because actually knowledge is important in its entirety, even when it's telling, you know, you kind of stupid things. It's still useful because that tells you something about the human reality and can help you also wondering about the reasons of that content, and so on. So people search for facts. They want to know kind of better interpretation that even they don't find immediately, at least on the internet. And I don't know who are these people. I don't know if it's the student, the high school student that has to enter, do his homework for the day after, so he frenetically, types that. I don't know whether it's a kind of a maybe it's a professional historian that still needs to know something, got curious about that. It was actually a wide range of people. And never also indulge, and I'm telling you as a historian, never think that historians are kind of the best thing you can find in absolute terms. Of course, a historian is hopefully going to be more reliable than someone else. But I personally, that I've seen it from the within of what, the university career and it's not truly like that. I mean, every historian has its own field of expertise, and most of the times he or she doesn't know actually pretty much. And also the quality of certain teaching is not always good, but it really has to do a lot with the intelligence of the person, the will to know. It doesn't take a sheet of paper that tells you you're a historian to be qualified for talking about certain things. It's not like it doesn't work like that. It actually, as a matter of fact, it doesn't work with anything. All our world is based on an approximation. Every kind of professional can be flawed, can be incompetent, unreliable, and so on. And history is also a very tricky ground, because history sometimes gets political, sometimes gets in this kind of weird gray area where you don't understand whether even the person is talking for kind of a personal BS, or maybe there are other things behind, because as many things, unfortunately, knowledge is also getting commercial. So and that's YouTube is kind of a good evidence of that. There is plenty of videos about kind of first of all the most popular stuff, because people think that, I mean, producers, how do you call them, the YouTube content producer creators, that's the word, creators. YouTube creators are doing it for just for fun. No, they're doing it for getting views. And they're doing it for, let's choose the cool topic, the Roman legions, the Roman legion versus the Macedonian phalanx. That's, if you Google that, but most of the people who made that video, they don't actually make it because they were excessively, keen on that topic, or because they were not even very competent on it. I'm sure there's plenty of videos that deal with that, satisfactorily in terms of historical awareness, but sometimes I rarely watch kind of historical videos. I rarely do. It might be strange, I actually, as a historian, I almost never watch historical contents on YouTube or anywhere else in a form of as a form of entertainment. I never do it. I prefer my books. I prefer looking at things in perspective, and also I don't want to talk about other channels because objectively I don't know them. But the very few times, part of the reason why I have this distance is the very few times I did, I said this is not good. And I must confess that part of the reason why I started Schwerpunkt is exactly this one. I mean, it's the idea, let's say things that are not common. but not common in terms of topic choice. That also can be, because objectively sometimes I Google in the first or certain historical subject, and then I bump into stumble into my own videos, because sometimes for that topic nobody has explicably done anything about it. But so that's also a strategy, by the way, because that interests me objectively, but I rarely do it. But the point I don't know what point I was making now. I mean, yeah, sometimes it's not a matter about the content or the type of topic you've chosen. It's really about how you explain it. For instance, there was an example that struck me at a certain point. It was, I made a video some time ago about the campaign of Pylos and Sphacteria of the Peloponnesian War in 425 BC. Now, my video lasts almost 3 hours, and it's actually a story of the pretty complex developments of the campaign, actually, of the two battles of Pylos and Sphacteria that take quite a while to describe from the sources, and that already was a synthesis from my opinion. I've watched, incidentally, a video that was about the I don't even remember. I don't want to even tell the name, not to create, confusion. I mean, to create hostility between the two. Of a guy who made a video about this topic that lasted 2 minutes. And at the end of the video, he also said something like, "And that's all you need to know from the Battle of Pylos and Sphacteria." So aside, I mean, if you want to do a 2 minutes video about this, it's perfectly fine. It was like 4 minutes, I don't remember. It was a couple of minutes, however. So if you want to do that kind of video length, it's fine. If you want to, we are all free. I believe very much in personal freedom, but the result, however, is going to be that people are going to believe, in that case, that there is not much more to know about that. That obviously stays on the person who created that comment. I also make lots of mistakes. Talking more also equates, to increase the incidence of possible mistakes and misconceptions and so on. But I believe that, for instance, in that case, I had not made that video so long, I would have lost very important chunks of information that instead you need to know about that specific campaign. It is actually so very interesting and important, and has lots of details. And then even if you read just Thucydides, that actually is extremely detailed for that campaign, but just for saying, it takes definitely more than just a couple of minutes. It takes quite a while, and my 3 hours videos are actually not even. My 3 hour video is not even enough. It would take if you want to study it well, you can also make a I wouldn't say university class just on that, but why not? I mean, if you want to study all the historical context and so on, you could objectively. So you see, I use this example for providing you with kind of self-evident realization that even, of course, in those 3 hours I might have said complete garbage, so that a lot of breath wasted for saying nothing. Hopefully I didn't. So let's assume that our information was objectively equal. It's obvious that I said equal in quality. I mean, it's obviously that I provided way more information than another person did. Where can a person find, for instance, so much information about Battle of Pylos and Sphacteria if he or she has not even ever heard of this from the beginning? Well, if you Google that, if you search on YouTube, you will probably find my video, and that maybe can help. So what I'm betting really by making Schwerpunkt, working on here, is to create a obviously I do it for myself. I mean, I believe there is kind of personal gain I can derive from this activity. Actually, very few, because up to now I put here 300 videos, and objectively I have a very few views overall, and this is kind of normal. There are people who pay to get sponsorized by YouTube, and just you pay magically, all the there are other kind of twin channels to mine that kind of rocketed to the stars because evidently someone paid for it. Um, but I didn't, and it's kind of stupid because why not? I mean, I could even pay for making Schwerpunkt growing. Part of the reason I don't do it is in part by principle in slash stupidity, because objectively, if I'm really interested in getting views, I could do it. But also I feel kind of like I want to deserve this on, with sweat and tears. But secondly, it's also because at the moment of doing something else important in my excuse me, in my life, so I don't have all this great time to stay on YouTube all this time. Actually, I can kind of answer anyone if I can, but it will sadly come the day when I will not be able to, given that now the trend has been relatively positive and constantly in growth and here I assume that the days in which I will not be able to answer anyone are close, and I will be very sorry because sometimes you make very brilliant questions, and that's really the point, that sometimes I don't have the time for myself to provide that answer, even preparing another video during the same day. And I could slow down the rate, which is perfectly fine, but also that equates to a kind of a slower growth. So there are many problems now I have to balance, but this is not the point. The point I was making is the ultimate goal. Let's say the goal for you, for which I'm making these videos, is actually to provide a bit of an insight into history, not as just the guy who tells the story because he is reliable, he's trustworthy and something like that, but just also to guide you a little bit on how these things are. Because let's be frank about this, there's plenty of people who are searching for someone who tells them the golden truth, the golden knowledge that, and it's typical. When I was younger, actually not many years ago, I was kind of like that. I instinctively, as a person, by nature, never followed anyone. I have a kind of character that always likes to do things by myself, even sometimes not even asking for help, and this also has some cons, of course, but and there was a point in which I discovered specifically military history, and I needed also here facts, responses. I was searching for people who would talk, and actually, if I see from my stats, the few ones that work, because for instance I have problems now with YouTube in getting certain stats right, but I can see that at least from the followers that made their age public, that my target, not my target actually, but the people who listen to me are in their mostly actually in their early 20s. Here I have demic datas. Yeah, like I think an 89% of the people who watch me are between the age of 18 and 24. Then, very interestingly enough, I have this range between 25 and 34 years old, among which I also am, by the way, which is a 1.4%. So very few. Then there is kind of 10% of watchers that have between 35 and 45 years old. This is very interesting, and this is not actually complete, because as I was saying, I don't have really the full spectrum. This is also data that is, I think, is derived just from the people who have inserted their own age. I think I haven't inserted my own age when I created this Schwerpunkt, or I gave a fake one. Also here, seemingly there are no women, which is also false, because I saw the certain profiles that were, I believe, at least they had a female name, they had the picture of a woman, so that's awfully, of course, but here I have 100% male watchers. It's kind of impossible, and I know by fact that there are women who follow me as well, because also they comment sometimes on also on Facebook when I share my videos. So this is definitely incomplete, but I realized that this macroscopical evidence that we have here seems to suggest that many of you are actually very young people, usually very young males, I believe. Is this kind of normal? Because that's the age, when you have testosterone at its peak, and you like, battles, fights, you want this kind of, and we all kind of been there. And I realize my contents are also a bit more evolved, but from for being watched by teens, for instance. So it's kind of, the stats is probably correct, but at the same time I and I understand what it means, and I wouldn't like you to think I'm while I'm speaking again, another subscriber. We are on the 321, which is also another young man, as I can see now. But the point I was making is I wouldn't like to to be for you like a teacher. That's something I hate, and I don't say it out of modesty. First of all, I'm actually, on some things way more than me. I mean, sometimes there are people who comment also on my videos, and they say things, and I say, okay. Now, I don't want to make names, but there are some of my regular commenters are people who are at least very well acquainted with history, and I think they are kind of historians or archaeologists. It's pretty evident from, even if they don't explicitate that. So it's kind of nice, and I have a lot of learning also from them. So I don't have any problem for this. That when I make, sometimes even during the videos, I say, oh well, I don't remember this. Can you please check if you want, correct me, and so on. Also suck at pronunciations sometimes. So if there is anything you want to say, it's fine. But I don't want anyone and all the rest, aside from these more mature commenters that are evidently more mature, that you're following me just because I'm a kind of a fact teller. I probably provide lots of things that can be considered as facts, let's say in brackets, but I would prefer you to be kind of more autonomous in this. I mean, I can guide you a little bit. I can say things that are kind of thought-provoking, that are interesting, even controversial sometimes, even if I try to keep the polemical content kind of down, because I feel it's not interesting sometimes. I mean, maybe it's interesting, but it's unnecessary. Also because most of the time, practically, I think, nothing about me as a person, because all I talk about is history on the channel. And I also don't have a lot of, of interest in putting my persona out there. I mean, I'm fine with that. Even it would be interesting now, 321 subscribers. It would be interesting to see you all in a room. It's kind of lots of people, and not because I have any particular attachment to people other than if they interact with me more intensely. But it's it's just for seeing you and knowing more about you, and taking that as a kind of a inquiry about statistical data and so on. But also because I want to thank you, of course, because Schwerpunkt, you're the soul of Schwerpunkt in this sense. If my videos were not to be watched by anyone, the Schwerpunkt wouldn't be here practically. So it would be just a self kind of perversion. So I'm kind of glad that you follow me, but always be aware that I'm not the I'm not anything special. You can realize. I mean, you can realize also from things I say. Every historian has, as I was saying before, his own field of expertise, and it's normal, even for university professors, to know fairly nothing about most of the rest of history, let's say. So I really feel this very much, and I would with Schwerpunkt, my greatest aim is just to provide another point of view. saying, this person has something to say. Let's listen to him, and let's, however, form our own idea about it. Because this is what I want to leave you with, and I do it at every video basically. I present you with certain, with all the things I discuss, but then I kind of let to you to draw the conclusions sometimes, but there is not even a conclusion to take. It's really about the mind working around this thing that helps you being aware. I don't know that there is something more out there, and that's also why I like sometimes to choose certain topics that are kind of unusual or less known, because I believe there is a kind of collective benefit from this. I mean, I truly believe that if putting historical contents out there is always a way to make things go better, to raise the people awareness about history. It's like when they make this terrible historically themed fictions out there, and you say, well, this sucks. Yeah, okay, but at least you're discussing about history. At least you're able to criticize. You have an object to criticize. Always remember that also with the information, with the media and so on, the problem of information is not really about whether it's right or wrong, but whether if it is told or not. Because if it is right, even if it is wrong, you have a base to criticize. I mean, often, naturally, you also have to check the sources and to considering what medium is that's about. But you at least have a topic that you're aware of and that you can search for more about. If instead you don't know something, you live as if it didn't exist, you lack that entire part of knowledge. So I believe that with history, at this point I've talked mostly about the Middle Ages, right? Mostly. What is the historical awareness about the Middle Ages out there? Maybe I should make a video in which I tell all the weird things I've heard in my life about the Middle Ages, maybe comments about remarks about people on medieval history. It's even funny, if it wasn't so sad by certain standards, so tragic, because I find personally still very, very interesting what's the perception, because that's also historical data. What is that people believe about Middle Ages in, the 21st century. There will be surely people, if the world will still be out there, that will study this and ask questions. And no, maybe my videos will be saved at that point. I will be dust, but my voice will kind of be also about, what are these experiences. Also, our world is definitely changing. Our concept of history, our availability of resources, of material is definitely changing in a way that will radically alter the way we conceive history in the first place. Now, I'm a person of the 20th century, even though I'm definitely, being projected in, in this 21st century world. And when I was born, it was still the Soviet Union, but, let's say I was projected unavoidably towards toward the future. That's kind of normal. That's kind of every generation is like that. But I also bear with me so much from I don't know, from my family, from the place I've been raised, and so on. So that's also normal. So I think that we are in a very important historical turning point. That also will require a new way of telling history. And I'm not saying with Schwerpunkt I'm presenting with a model, of course, with this, but I still think it's important actually just to talk about it and to be aware that history is not just it's not just a way, a narrative to look at what we are, but it's a sheer exercise. I mean, it's when you solve a maths problem or you translate a Latin passage, it's you kind of get the same benefit. You make your brain work and you understand the complexity, the Yeah, definitely the complexity of reality, and history is like this because history is supposed to be a science, or better to have a scientific method, but there is hardly any kind of scientific reality in history. Everything is kind of an interpretation that you can bring it obviously at a much higher level, philosophically speaking, for science or by certain standards. But with history, it's much more evident. So it's something that history never ceases. Just think that when you're come on this earth, the time you're given to leave will never be enough even to know a tiny part of the whole historical knowledge we have accumulated up to this point. So you're free to expand towards every direction, and every historian has her own world that he or she creates in out of this enormous mass of data that is here for us to be analyzed, or ultimately we conceive it as such because we deem it's enough important. And naturally, there are so many cliches about history. History is used politically very much. Another thing that I notice sometimes is that every time I make a video that kind of evades from the more usual, storytelling, and it gets a bit more critical, a bit more, a bit deeper. Also, not in ideological terms, but for instance, when I talk about religion, it happens to me to talk often about things like paganism, like Christianity, like Islam, and I realize there is, if when you present that to the public, it doesn't matter whether your content is meant to be kind of neutral, because it's just meant to tell a story that obviously has its own narrative, but it's not aimed to take sides or anything. There's always someone who kind of dislikes that. And I don't mean it with a thumb down on the video. I mean it generally. I mean, you understand that behind it there is a kind of perplexity. There is someone who comments strange things, even not being fully explicit, because you realize that that's a topic that somehow is, it's so surrounded, it's loaded with potential. Many people see that as sometimes, this is something I wanted to talk to you about, also relatively to the contents of my and the criticism of my contents. First of all, I would like to say this: for the rate of videos, I don't know whether we'll change it. Some of you say, well, I can't keep up with your videos, and actually they always commented it as a positive thing. How can you make so many videos every day? A video a day, and for such a long time. And that's kind of fine, because at least I make more videos that you can watch. So what's best than that, and it's free. So it's not really a problem. I might be changing this. For instance, when I make the you have realized I make a video about military history and a video about kind of manualistic medieval history. The reason I do, because Schwerpunkt was born actually as a military history channel, and it will remain, and it will tendentially go towards that direction in the future, so it will increase towards that direction. But the main problem now is also to make mass with the videos. I mean, to provide a available amount of information that can be accessed and that has a connection. Now I made 300 videos, and many of these videos are all connected in topic, so that very often during my videos, as if you're a regular follower, I make things usually at the beginning by saying, if you're interested about this topic, be aware that I also made a video about this and video about that. And through the tag system, I'm probably able to get enough these videos kind of related. I mean that sometimes when you're watching a video, you're being kind of advised to see this other one that is related to it, and I get a substantial amount of views from that algorithm, which is good, because that's what I want. I mean, to have a even it's very difficult sometimes. At least I feel, I don't know how it is from the outside, but that it's very difficult probably to listen to me because it really lasts like a very long time. Like it could be a university class every time. It's pretty long, even longer than the usual. So it's very difficult to understand the whole thing. It's objectively very difficult, and I'm not asking you to make the effort to accept it, because I realize that it can be harmful also for my channel. But at the same time, if there is something you kind of don't understand, or maybe you listen I'm saying during the video, and you wonder what I'm saying, well, first of all, you can comment, and I may answer you if I have the time. But secondly, there are kind of other videos at this point that kind of touch similar topics, especially about average medieval, kind of basic medieval history. Now I have a very solid group of topics that are kind of very intertwined, so there's a whole net you can explore. And I like this idea that when you go on Schwerpunkt you find so many things, even randomly at the beginning, but that you get into them and you kind of get this similar, you're suggested other videos that are kind of similar, so maybe you get more interested, and that's the result, and that's really what I want. It's really getting people used to certain thoughts that are sometimes I'll even repeat, because every video is really kind of radically different from the other, meaning that I really choose these topics and I kind of deliver them always from a different point of view, so that you have certain phenomena, historical phenomena that I treated from, that might sound similar, maybe from the title and so on, but they actually take the matter from different points of view. I believe that's important, making just one video and even pretending to tell it all, because sometimes these are topics that would require really a university course to only introduce. So when you say, oh my god, this video is 2 hours and a half long, well, just know that would require a lifetime of studies to dominate fully as a topic, and I'm just kind of presenting it in some introductory fashion in its essentials, not really being even able to go much beyond, because objectively even YouTube, I don't think is meant to work like that. This is about the length. So could I cut down the length? Theoretically, yes, I could kind of work and concentrate a bit more on kind of making the content a bit more concise, and kind of saying more, telling more by saying less, actually. But that takes time, in turn, for me, and I fear I don't have that time. So sometimes it's even better to wander a bit around these topics and getting to know them bit by bit. But just always be aware that everything I say in the video is part of the cycle, and I'm always going to close that cycle in the end. So it's never something I'm just telling anecdotally. I really need that at that moment, and it's important also to stress certain ideas, I believe, that are kind of interesting or important to understand history. Secondly, and this is perhaps a bit more, it is true, I do take a lot of time, and this opens to the second point, and the way I speak in English. I do take a lot of time telling things. Sometimes I get around, it's normal, because sometimes I simply don't know the words. So I use a lot of adverbs. Let's say I say things like, let's say, and actually, and then all this stuff. I realize it sounds bad, but partly I'm thinking about it, and secondly, I think it's important to be also a bit more discursive. My English sucks simply because I kind of abandoned it studying when I finished high school, and I don't really I haven't really done much to improve, especially my spoken English. And I believe, however, that Schwerpunkt helped me a little bit, as now I can speak better after all these videos than when I began. I realized that when I began, For instance, I didn't know so many words that now I do, that became kind of natural in my vocabulary because I had never had to translate a term for speaking in English in any occasion. So I feel the improvement, and I can't promise you, that from one day to another I will magically be able to speak English at a C2 or but at least that things will get better. And I swear I'm really sorry for this, because many of you actually commented in a very polite fashion saying, I'm sorry, I know you're appreciate what you're doing here, you know lots of things, I like what you say, I'm interested, but I simply can't listen to you because you speak badly. And I'm really sorry for that, and I perfectly understand. I'm not as naughty, I realize I speak badly, so there is nothing wrong in telling me, as long as it's polite. Because I found actually very few people who kind of said the same exact things, but they said it in kind of an insulting way. And in that case, if you come here to insult, I will delete your comments. So usually at the beginning I didn't want to delete comments, and also in the future I will probably won't have the time even to check the comments in the first place. So I know that this stigma of my pronunciation will kind of remain out there, but one thing is commenting saying, your video sucks because of this reason. Please do better because I like what you say, and please don't take it as offense. Fine. I'm perfectly fine with that. I know that my videos largely suck by certain standard, but if you start saying, things that are kind of uselessly and sometimes even evidently just even wrong. Sometimes I was I was reading things that I realized that person had not even watched the entire video. But not even about the language, and this opens actually to the third thing about the contents and how many people listen to contents sometimes. If it's just insulting, I'm doubting it point, and it definitely takes you much more to write it than for me to read it and delete it. So we can't save both of our times. And the reason I do it is not that I give much about it, because if you insult me, it's not that you shatter my self-esteem. It's just that I believe that on a video that has potentially some good content, just criticizing the spoken part and adding to an insult is kind of unnecessary. Brings kind of a negative energy in there that could be channeled in a more constructive criticism by saying, why don't you speak better, like trying to adjust this and that. That would be much more useful for me if you're really interested also in my contents. If you come there, you have in bad mood, and you just want to make some rude remark, well, yeah, I can even keep your comment, which I already did in the future, but sometimes you could even get the comment cancelled. And the same goes for any other comment. This opens to another question, that is how you actually receive my you understand my contents. It's very difficult objectively to get what I want to say straight, because it's very difficult to listen to me for several hours talking. So I think it's more than natural, statistically speaking, that there's always someone who at best misunderstands my comments, my contents, sorry. And this happens frequently. Sometimes there were people who were that there was kind of a thing that made me think, because sometimes I know what I say more or less in the videos, because of course I don't remember what I said in all 300 videos, but I kind of remember more or less what topics I touched. And if someone writes to me what they kind of understood from it, I can realize whether they understood what I said or not, even by not remembering exactly what I said. And it happened a few times actually, which is kind of amazing given the views I got statistically, that this person not only had that, maybe didn't just equivocate the content, because that would be normal. It actually wrote something that was opposite to what I said. So at that point, knowing that it was opposite to what I said, I I had no reason. For instance, if you equivocate my contents, or if you want also to criticize pretty heavily my content, I'm never going to eliminate your comment, because there is no point for that. On the contrary, especially if I think that your comment is particularly wrong, maybe I leave it in there simply because I believe there is someone who's coming there and listening to the video and saying, but he didn't say anything like that. I'm saying this because it's plenty of people out there that come to see certain videos, and then I was saying before, maybe they immediately get in a state of alert because either my video deals with I don't know, their own country or their own religion or something like that, and they immediately feel like they have to know better without even listening to the video. So they get to this very fast conclusion, and I know how it works, because basically feel anxious that person said, and you're kind of irritated or annoyed that someone has an opinion on things you feel you care about, and you have to express your comment. This happens also on Facebook. Sometimes that's funny because I posted certain videos about, I don't even remember what it was. It was about well, it's not important really, but there was a person who wrote in a concise form what basically I said, and the point was, it wasn't just an informative thing like a conclusion, like saying, okay, so I listened to this from the video, I just repeat what it's saying here, and to see even if I got it clear and so on. No, it was just showing that they were there, that they understood more or less what I was talking about from the title, for the description, and then just posted that thing, and as if I know that that's the real answer, and the video is kind of not saying it for but I was actually explaining it also for kind of with more words and more information, and this makes me understand so much like certain humans at least work, how they need sometimes to feel, I don't know, that they are there, maybe not just appreciated, but that they are noticed somehow. There's plenty of people who like history, who like to kind of always say their own things. And I don't mean there are, as I was saying before, there are people who comment and say very extraordinary things, but sometimes there are people who just, you realize they comment saying their own thing without even having heard what I said, and saying things that if they only had heard the video, they might have kind of avoided even to say, because those are things I explain actually in the video. I even explain why they're not true, and you answer with a thing that basically is just stating your own opinion that has, however, not taken into consideration what even the content of the video was. And I'm not saying you can't do it. I mean, I'm fine with that. Actually, comments attract other people, other viewers, and they kind of make the the watchers kind of interacting more with the video because they're kind of more curious, so they want to maybe confrontate the comment with the video and so on. But the point I'm making is really like more like an advice, is my videos are kind of heavy, they're kind of difficult, but not because of the the difficulty of what I'm saying. It's really because they're long, they're demanding in this sense, also temporally and with an effort and so on. Also my English sucks and so on. So the best thing you can do actually is to listen to them, maybe in chunks. If you have time, you can, if time to waste, you're particularly interested in the video, you want to know how it is, here 20 minutes at a time, 30 minutes at a time, and just reflect on it. Because that's actually my objective. I don't care if you agree or disagree with my content. I've never cared about that. But just let your mind say, but was I aware of this perspective? Or do I have something more to need to know about this and to go research? Because that's what I'm content with. And that's what that's enough for me. If I achieve that, fine, mission accomplished. All the rest is welcome. But just be aware that not everything is useful. this is the point going to make. And I don't believe I'm a particularly authoritative figure on most of the videos I say, but definitely what I say is taken from people who are, in part, that I learned from. So even if definitely I can have also my misinterpretations and so on, especially that's pretty normal in many ways. I mean, there are certain history is difficult objectively, but let's say that the effort is you should take into consideration up to which point that topic is being scoped, and that's the goal of Schwerpunkt. Making the audience understanding. Maybe I have to go better into this. Even if you want to criticize my video, because if you come with all the bibliographical references and you say, look, this is wrong, it's actually good. If I start getting such comments on my videos, that's also a very positive thing, because they are objectively, it means that they're attracting people who are aware of history, and they can also spread this knowledge I can learn from personally. But if it's just because you feel that, I don't know, your favorite team is not properly portrayed, ultimately nobody cares about you. And this is sometimes it's hard to say, because I realize it's not really very important even to specify, but it can be a guide for all of these people for all the people who maybe are wondering whether they should answer or not, comment or not. And if you hear these words as just spoken, that's maybe the orientation. I'm saying it as an advice. Because as I said, even if you comment negatively, you can add to my channeling part. So you don't take anything out from me. Of course, if you say something very outrageous for no reason, as I just say, I will delete the content, but just for for letting the other people kind of free from spam or something like that. Now, if you have criticism, this is the challenge. Criticize it from the basis. Take the sources, go look at them, because that's actually going to be useful for all involved. The rest is not. Okay, so relatively to the visual, to the graphical content, I'm sorry, I can't do much about that either. Recently, I started inserting more pictures in sequence. It's kind of good, because I began just with very primitive means, and now I'm just decided to add a bit more. And there is not really much I can say. Unfortunately, I don't have I'm not one who is helping me in this, and I think I don't want, because even the visual contents for me are very important. They're not just random pictures taken from just for that. Sometimes I think that all these kind of historical, pseudo-historical videos you can find on YouTube are out there. Sometimes are using pictures that are more kind of sensationalistic based than actually historically accurate, and I don't think it's a very good thing. So even if I see that picture, probably, I don't know, the average person would say, oh wow, cool, this picture looks cool, but from a person who maybe knows just a little more, you realize that you made a video about a historical topic and you chose even a wrong picture. That probably is not, I'm not saying that the video is not necessarily going to be bad, because that also can be just a clickbait, but it's not a good presentation, in my opinion. I always use pictures that have to do with the topic I'm discussing, and I reveal you that it's very, very tough, actually, because sometimes I make videos about topics those pictures, for which I can't find pictures objectively. I was talking about a post-Carolingian ecclesiastical aristocracies. I mean, what can you find? Yeah, you can find some pictures from Carolingian times and monasteries and so on, but it's there are very few, and it's also very difficult to vary. At that point, you will have to use one or two background photos and not much more. So that's also the reason why my graphic side is kind of not very developed, and I'm sorry for that too, actually, because I would like to have cool animations and stuff like, but simply I don't have the time, and sometimes I would somehow I would feel that also that would distract the attention from the main topic. Recently I made a video that got a fair amount of views about the Notitia Dignitatum, so all these I listed basically all these unit shield patterns. So it's basically the only video in which I don't talk. Something about probably some of you were happy, and I just used this graphical thing, showing shield by shield. It was just a kind of a Roman themed music in the background. That was fine. Seemingly people appreciated, and that just because it had a bit more of a visual dynamism. But objectively, I think that, as I was saying before, the contents I'm making are meant to be kind of different from that. I mean, the contents are based on you listening to what I'm saying, and I can't make it different, because that's how I see history. I think history is interesting not just because something looks cool. I also use pictures that, of course, if I have several pictures, I try to use even the first criterion is the historical accuracy, but obviously I'm going to use the best pictures visually as a secondary criterion. That is kind of normal, and so also count on that. For instance, I noticed also strange things, like that people seemingly are automatically clickbaited by pictures of the thumbnail of a map, for instance. Every time I notice this, every time I make a thumbnail with a map, people are gonna click more on that, because they feel, why? Because they feel that it's like all those kind of viral videos that are out there that people like, with all the maps that with all the various country borders that change over the years and they switch with time. And no, that's not gonna be it, so I'm sorry. And I don't know why people are obsessed by that. There's also kind of a there are many reasons. As I often say in my videos, I believe today's people are still pretty much obsessed by this kind of 19th century political / geographical conception. That's also why I hate the term geopolitics, which actually means nothing. Also in terms of military theory, but it's very it's very famous in journalism, especially not surprisingly. In fact, study history, not journalism. I'm kidding. Of course, there is good journalism, but it's just geopolitics is a word that doesn't make sense, like many others actually that are overused and misused, definitely. But yeah, people are like this idea of, who was the biggest country, who had the greatest extension, who had the largest borders, and so on. That's how many people are really obsessed by, and this is a typically even these people maybe are not nationalists, but it's still nationalistically driven, because that's how we in the West started conceiving history back in the 19th century. From these maps, from this cartographical knowledge was already well advanced, and they had to stress the unity of this kind of nation states that had to see who they expanded were, who had more colonies, who was the biggest guy. That was it, and people have that absorbed pretty much as well. So I believe that's, for instance, a reason why I could gladly make a video about what are people kind of even triggered by, even in the positive sense. What is it people are mostly interested by? Sadly enough, for instance, I that I still share my videos on Facebook history groups. I do it simply because it's plenty of people in there, and so they can view, and therefore I regularly get, as soon as I share these videos, I usually do it every day, every video I make in all of these groups. So I get this immediate reaction from the people who are going to see the video, and whether they like it or not, they're going to click on it. And now also the number of subscribers that get immediately the notification is increasing, but it can be understood also from there a little bit. I realize that there are certain topics that really people do not like at all. I can make a beautiful example of this also actually over time. This has nothing to do with Facebook groups actually. But it's like, there are videos who have kind of 2 views and others that have more than 600 at this point, I believe. And this has nothing to do or at least only partially to do when they were loaded, but they're actually that number of views is really related to how much people really like that topic. I'm getting tons of views from the migration era, for instance. I'm getting here the very first pool of videos that got so many views are beginning of the migration era, Scythians and Sarmatians at the roots of the migration era, the Frankish Merovingian kingdom, the Alemanni history of a Germanic people. This is it. There is a bit about Byzantine military, and this got the first one got 661 views, mostly from the outside. I mean, not when I shared it. So when it's people that actually search for it. And least watched videos actually, now we'll list more of them, are medieval craftsmanship and the birth of arts, published more than almost 90 months ago. I mean, while there were hundreds of people searching for the migration era, nobody gave a damn about such actually a very important chapter of medieval history that is the craftsmanship, the corporations, the guilds. And why? I believe there are many reasons behind this, but mostly it's like this idea that, I don't know, this attraction for the Middle Ages and the early medieval times, the migration era is this wild, dynamic, and so cool reason for, I don't know why, because they think about warriors. I'm very interested about military history myself, but I still can't find, I also like the migration era, but why all of this difference? Then this other videos in here, what is this? About the communal world. Many people, I made several videos at this point about the Italian communes. Are actually pretty interesting topic, quite overlooked indeed, and people just don't like it. They say, well, Italian communes, what's that? Blah. They don't click on it. It's fine. Here, but a very, very few views. That now these videos actually have been up for quite a long time. That really tells you that, YouTube is kind of open access all the West, almost all of the world. Of all the billions of people we are, 5 views, 3 views in 9 months. I mean, that means nobody cares. Nobody actually gives a damn about it. And this is kind of heartbreaking. Ecclesiastical estates in the late Carolingian era. Yeah, I can understand why people are not interested, because objectively, But I swear, it's kind of important, if you really listen to it, if you give it a chance. So I'm not begging for views at all. I'm just remarking that it's kind of upsetting that certain macroscopical chapters of medieval history are completely neglected. I mean, I find it genuinely worrying. Also in here, what else do we have? I mean, yeah, it's plenty of topics that you can already guess. Also about medieval peasantry. Nobody cares about the peasantry. Everybody cares about knights and dames and cool things. What about the peasants? If you were the average medieval inhabitant, you would be a peasant. Basically, this was a pre-industrial world, so it was mostly, the wide majority of everything was about the peasantry. why does nobody like the peasantry? And this is interesting because I believe that's explainable also as a legacy of the Middle Ages. Like the people who wrote at the time didn't like peasants very much. They thought they were kind of wild, half animals and half men. Just today I was reading something about that, incidentally. Actually, it's a colleague of mine who was telling me certain things. So the and another difference that I saw, but that could be more systemically related also to the fact that objectively there are more people who are interested in that topic, on Facebook groups I share, is that there are way more people that are interested in Roman history than medieval history. I mean, I realize it, that there are people even post sometimes regularly when I make a video about ancient warfare. They're very happy. I talk about medieval warfare, they don't care. And it's not their fault. I mean, I'm not blaming them. Of course, everybody likes what they want. But it's still meaningful for me. And not just because I'm making these contents. This is not a matter of, these are my contents, so people don't watch them, I freak out. No, I don't care about that. Actually, if I really cared about views, I would insist, obviously, on the more kind of popular things. Instead, I don't, because I have other priorities, including the one of producing lots of content about exactly those things that people don't care about, because they don't care it because they don't know it, largely. This is always as it happens into history and in knowledge in general, with human minds. It's always about having a contempt for what you don't know. That's normal. That's how we were programmed by evolution back in the day, and it still works, obviously, in our genetic hardware, and but it's kind of sad. So if I make a video about the Romans, everybody get hundreds of views every time and so on. If I make a video about the Middle Ages, they don't care. It's kind of sad, and I know why it happens, actually, and I usually don't like to create this kind of criticism, this kind of because objectively I know what happens, so it's not even something you can change much. But first of all, I'm trying to change it in a small measure with my videos. But secondly, I'm also I'm a bit disappointed because I'm worried about how society is going. If you don't like certain parts of history, it's at that point I believe you're not treating history seriously. At least if you are. I mean, I can understand about expertise. As was said before, nobody can be expert about everything, but if you are interested in generalist contents, like I believe most of my audience is actually interested in, is why not train also medieval times? Because medieval times are dark, because they're so bad, they're so terrible times. There's plenty of prejudices still about medieval times that sadly people truly believe in. It also matter. They make it a matter, an ideological matter. And when I try to explain it, you realize that the reason why they have that prejudice is that because objectively they don't know that it's historically false. So sometimes I can take, of course, more. I can be more incisive on this. I'm actually probably very sometimes also on certain topics I always tend to appreciate, for instance, the importance of the Middle Ages, their dynamism, their depth, their variety, their versatility. I mean, how much these times actually gave to us, and how we can't recognize it still, which is quite upsetting for the 21st century. At the same time, I understand these things, and I'm patient about it. So yeah. What else could I say about the channel? How much is it growing? First of all, well, as I said, I have now 321 subscribers. It's not really a lot. as you understand, it's actually relatively few, given I have 300 videos. But I also think it's normal. And when I created Schwerpunkt at the beginning, I knew I was actually curious. I just wanted to test essentially how it was like to have a YouTube channel, to see how many views I could get and so on. And I must tell you, being from this side, it's I can't say it's disappointing, because YouTube is, I think, still kind of a good site. There are certain things I don't like about it, of course, even at a kind of a deep level. In the philosophy, they're trying to push a little bit on also what the contents should be about. I'm for absolutely free contents, but sometimes I realize also certain choices. If it was for me, I would really keep censorship to a minimum, and I wouldn't probably wouldn't even have something like that. But excuse me, I sometimes understand that it really depends on what the reaction you get. Also, these sites are not, the people who are behind it know what they're doing. Naturally, they also want to make money out of it, which is perfectly fine. Now there's been thing with the European Union, this thing of the rights. We'll see what happens, but probably not a big much. And I must say that the whole experience, however, was a little disappointing. I mean, especially looking at how easy it is for certain channels to get certain views. If you pay, everything is going to go fine, obviously. And that's also how these sites make quite an amount of money sometimes, just for sponsoring their own channel. And it's fine, it happens like this also on Facebook. And I don't think I want to do it. I want to let it grow naturally, also because I care about the stats and how they work. I mean, I'm really fascinated with seeing how this system grows by itself. If you don't touch it, it's like an experiment. I've had, in terms of views, I had here something like 23,000 views at this point. I began to make videos regularly every day only from last summer, and it's not a really amount of views, but it's still kind of good. Usually daily I get now something between 200, 180 a day. It's a few, it is, but the trend has been in growth. Actually, the views trend has been kind of steadily growing. I must say that there have been several ups and downs. It's normal also in here. The visualization time is is also growing, and actually I think in proportion growing more than the views, but it kind of has, it's much more irregular in some ways, or at least it swings more widely, because it at this point I still have relatively few views, so the individual watcher that watches it for several times, it's not it can be, maybe it does it one day and the other doesn't watch it, so it causes this swinging. I have a total of 88 days of visualizations, of watch length, and this brings the average watch length that is actually very important on YouTube to kind of relatively higher than the normal. It's kind of normal because my videos are particularly long, and actually it's not that the video length goes in proportion. I've read that the average YouTube video length is like 3 minutes, and I have 5 minutes and a half, so it's kind of thing. And likes are kind of growing as well together with subscribers. Dislikes are kind of not growing that much, or a bit more regular, but they're there, and not much. The ratio I think is quite good. Here it says there is kind of a, I don't know, a dislike every 20 or 30 likes or something like that. There are many people I see here that are kind of sharing my videos, and some of them are putting them en masse in certain playlists, and that brings to me a lot actually of of views, I believe, in some way. I mean, not excessively much. If you look at the stats here, there is as you understand, a great difference. The most important thing is the watch length. It's not really the views. And talking about in terms of watch length, which is really what really matters, I get a 28% from a free YouTube search. Then I have these ones that I don't know. It's a consistent number. Actually, from the channel page that are 15%. Then the external ones, mainly the ones from Facebook now, are 15% of the video length. So I could even stop sharing from Facebook, but also I get since I get several followers from there too. So I think I can keep doing it. At least maybe not sharing it on the groups all the times, but at least on my profile for those who already follow me. Then I've got this function of navigations. What is this? Yeah, I mean, people will watch my videos from someone else's playlist. I mean, not really playlist, but you know, on some channels you can see which videos you like, or to which pages you subscribed, so on. Then the rest is kind of smaller, but I get a consistent 8.6% from advice videos, which is not really a few. And then other from notifications, 7.3%. Whatever. This is maybe not so important, just for telling you how this is segmented. And that's it. And I must say, it's been, especially subscribers have been kind of increasing substantially lately. I mean, I've noticed that the subscribers at this point do not really increase together with the, I had a very fast increase of subscribers in the very last month, whereas the views and the watch length kind of progressed more, more steadily, without sensible. So I don't know how many viewers I will get in like 1 month or 2 months. For now, the trend is quite positive, and I'll see what it will happen like. I don't know whether how these things work, whether the channel takes off by itself, or people talk about it. Just yesterday was a guy who shared my channels on Facebook somewhere, say, I like so much this channel. So that's all things that start happening aware in another. So you might bump into my videos. Some of my videos from a playlist, for someone would put my videos in there. You can see that from the channel of one of your friends that subscribe to Schwerpunkt. I don't know, many ways. And it will keep going in this automatical form. So not from Facebook, where probably some of those who are following me now probably came from, and I will stop doing it also at one point to share on Facebook groups. But that's also kind of nice, kind of useful. I've been up to this point, I sensibly increased, I think, my followers also thanks to that. But it was not a major rise. It was something very steady, but very progressive. And just now I'm getting more or more retinue, let's say. And I've also recently been asked by a couple of people to, they were interested in me cooperating with them for some work. I don't know what they had to do. Even there was a Russian TV channel who contacted me for a documentary. There was I was proposed certain things. Then I don't have much time, unfortunately, so I didn't want to be rude. Actually, I politely refused. But I feel in the future I will be asked more. If it happened just for the few things I've made. It's I was surprised sometimes, especially one from the Russian TV documentary. I don't tell you what it was, but it wasn't the topic of one of my videos. They wanted a Skype interview with me, and I said, okay, I'm sorry, but not because I didn't want to be, actually it could have been a good opportunity also to make the views rise, but I somewhat thought that it wasn't. First of all, I was not extremely expert on the topic. I mean, the interview was quite short, like 5 to 10 minutes. So I could have, on the video I was commenting. From these people contacted me for I was talking for that like for half, an hour and a half, so it would have not been a problem. But I kind of felt, that maybe if it was such a generalist contact, maybe it wasn't so necessary for me to put my image out there. But let's see what happens in the future. Excuse me, I drink a little bit. So my picture, my figure. Now that I mention it, it's not as I said before. I don't care about me. I mean, I will surely appear at some point. I mean, I don't need to show myself in the video. I don't think you're interested. I don't. It's not a. It's really about the fact that first of all, many people don't actually know who I am. I mean, among my colleagues, among my friends, they have no idea, I guess. Um, but it's not really about that. It's more that I don't necessarily care about putting my image out there for no reason. Ultimately, I'm still a small channel. So who cares about what I look like or what I do or who I am? It's not really a problem at this point. It's not something you need to appreciate my contents. I prefer at this point, like in videos like this, for instance, are pretty rare because I rarely open, relatively to such topics. For you to maybe establish kind of a trust relation. I mean, if I show you that my contents are always be like that, that I'm always staying focused on the accuracy or, the historicity of just, not being. I believe that part of the reason for some of you follows me is also the way I am, in the way I deliver the contents, the way I speak. I don't know. I'm generally a calm person by nature. I speak like that usually with most anyone. I don't have any and I realize certain people like this because they want to hear someone who is not too pretentious, too arrogant. Actually, I'm not very arrogant nor pretentious. However, I can be a little bit kind of definitely ambitious, but also sometimes I can behave like. I have my dark side as well, but generally that's how I am also in real life, and I always sound like this sometimes. I'm also in real life I'm not very talkative at all. I usually talk a lot just with Schwerpunkt through Schwerpunkt actually. No, I actually talk like this only when I know someone from some time and I can open up, and I'm glad to communicate. And naturally for me communicating is kind of always fascinating, and Schwerpunkt is good because I actually talk with I don't talk with myself. I really believe I'm talking to you personally, but the fact I'm not hearing you is it kind of comforts me because it usually when I speak with someone I always care about what that person has to say. I leave many spaces. I don't say much. I don't comment much because I don't want to be too incisive, to sound too presumptuous, or that I want to influence the person. So I'm actually speaking very freely in here. And to me it's actually very strange to have put now I don't know how many hours, how many days actually at this point of my voice talking out here, and I still find amazing that there are people who listen to me because I somewhat understand that I can be interesting in the contents I provide and in the way I provide them, but after all I'm kind of boring as a person. I don't think I have such a huge appeal that by speaking I should polarize your attention, to mesmerize. I don't think myself like that. I actually have a problem with communicating because sometimes I think I'm a very I'm actually too sensitive when I explain things. Like I always care about the person understanding, and I know that there are people who like more incisive talk. Yeah, and I can do that too, telling the truth, but I somewhat feel that it wouldn't be very fitting with the kind of topic I'm discussing, because the topic I'm discussing are always very complex, so I can't be so direct, so incisive, so self assertive, because at that point it would be mostly about my persona, and I don't care. I'm actually doing this as if it was history was talking through me, rather than me actually adding, if not something secondary. So this is really how I feel it. And as you realize, I like to talk actually, so it's not really a problem. As I was saying at the beginning of the video, I appreciate to discuss like this. And there is something I would like to ask you actually, because sometimes, I must say this, it's difficult for me to make one video every day. Sometimes, and up to now, it's been working, and I kind of astonished even myself in the ability I have to to present all of these different contents every day, without a very thorough preparation. But sometimes I wish I had. In fact, there were certain times I usually if I can't, usually the military history videos are kind of more complex ones. Not really, but that there have been certain ones that were a bit more complex, like especially when I discuss the campaign and the battle at once, like I did for Manzikert, or for, I don't know, recently what I made, something that requires a bit more preparation of all the various phases, of all the various. It took me days to prepare it, and days in which I compensated this vacuum with the general medieval history. This is not less difficult actually, but you can add a bit more. So even on certain, commenting on very certain small concepts, you can actually develop pretty much. So it's not really a big, it's a big deal, but just sometimes I might be out of time. So what I want to ask you, if you're interested in this kind of general commentaries I can make, always on historical topics, but not related to stories. I mean, like I could talk to you, for instance, what it's like to learn history, how you can do it, what kind of books, how it's the process of learning, how it's university like, how it's choosing your university like, what's history about it, university, what I don't know, so many things you have on even professors, on colleagues, on things that objectively, before I started university, I knew not much about, and I wish I had found someone who could explain me really. Of course, every experience is different, because I guess every country has also different habits and so on. But there are certain common things, especially about history learning, that they come. They're pretty similar. I mean, everywhere, and also this idea of always being emphasizing how it is important to have an autonomous critical skill, and not really believe that there are kind of authorities, kind of infallible, flawless authorities you should listen to, for which you're mistreated. I've seen certain things in my experience that was not, particularly intense, also because I don't like university very much. But not, yeah, actually university is cool, but it's, at least for me personally, I've always preferred to stay a bit apart of it, to even consider it kind of secondary in my life, even if I fortunately progressed pretty well into it. Because I believe that sometimes even career is not everything. I'm personally, actually, I'm telling a bit of myself now. I'm much more about feelings. Like, my life is mostly about people, I love, and that's really the most important thing. I mean, I even have difficulties to consider myself as a historian proper. I have this idea that either we are all historians as human beings because of our existential condition, or it's difficult to say, yeah, you are a professor, or you have a degree in history, so you're better. Not necessarily. I also don't buy the idea that everybody's opinion is valid, because everybody should be entitled to express his or her own opinion. That doesn't mean that the opinion is valuable intrinsically, and in fact we are living in a world now where opinions are taken just as if, because they are opinions, not because of what their contents are. So it's also very upsetting. So I would like also to scope these topics sometimes with you, and if you are interested, because otherwise I don't think I'm going to do it by myself. But it could happen. If I don't have time, I try to fill the gaps with this, and that's it. And I can assure you, I'm a mortal, just in case you were wondering. So I can fail in so many ways. I could die. So this can happen. So, but if everything continues like this, just know that I have virtually infinite topics I can discuss. So I will not die before having exhausted all the topics I want to talk to you about. So this is kind of what I promise you. Then, even if I don't die, or if I don't get paralyzed, or I get some kind of, I don't know, I lost the ability of speaking, or something like that, the worst things you can imagine, it might well happen that at a certain point I will maybe cut this for some reason, for instance, now in May I think I will go on vacation, so I will not of course I will not be making videos sometimes for a week, actually, maybe in the summer too. As well as I might be working now. There is my research now, and carrying out now is pretty absorbing. I'm approaching towards the final part, so it's very difficult sometimes, and I might be needing time, so I might reduce also the number of videos, which is actually the simplest thing. And sometimes my plan, in fact I didn't finish what I was saying before relatively to the type of videos I make. My plan is to kind of having these monolithic history topics as this gap filler, and really focusing mostly on military history. So I might sometimes take off those lessons, although many of you might be interested in those. So I'm personally, also if you tell me that you like those, I will not stop them. But it might happen I will kind of start making videos maybe one every 2 days. But this also means, because I have an interest to make many videos actually, given that I can make them relatively easily every day. So the more videos I make, in this sense, I might lose something in quality and organization, but it's mostly the time I lose every day for not doing other things. And the faster, however, the channel rises. So that's also important. And the idea is, I don't talk exactly of the best I can talk about now, but I rather form kind of a base of videos that basically works like a kind of a autonomous organism, for which people keep watching even if I don't share these, and they can acquire mass through subscribers and so on. So that even if for one time I will probably not have the time to post so frequently, I will still have this continuity in what I share, what in the views I get, the followers I get. What else? I don't know. What else can I say? Of course, am I happy of doing this? Well, yeah, I'm kind of. I mean, I think everything in life has a toll of some sort, of some degree, and it's pretty normal. to be questioning also certain life choices. Schwerpunkt is, I can say it means an enormous much to me. I mean, I think at the beginning I was much more attached to it. Now that I saw what it practically means, I kind of look at it in a more realistic way. But probably it became a part of my life now. From so many months, I'm doing this literally every day. And therefore, it's sometimes there were times I was very tired. I didn't want to make these videos every day. Kind of got anxious about having to do it, but I must say I got used to it, and I'm making it kind of well, in spite of all the problems naturally that the contents have that were listed before, and I'm fairly satisfied with it. I mean, I think it's positive generally, and I don't know whether I'm doing this for personal, because I still don't earn anything from this, and probably will kind of also upset me. I also, by the way, yeah, I tried to subscribe to Patreon, but eventually I got lazy because I didn't make a card, and I don't know how much money I could get from this. But if I ever do that, please never think I do this for money, because actually, and even if it's not very nice to say, it's not that I'm such a great need of money right now. So I think that the main reason is I do it is really I want to talk history, and if I look at personal gains, I most likely think first of all at the fact I'm learning history myself, because I'm learning every day new things, also thanks to Schwerpunkt myself. But also because of those opportunities that I was mentioning before. I mean, some people calling me and saying, hey, are you interested in, I don't know, speaking or doing it? This could open some option to me. I mean, I've heard of certain YouTubers that, I don't know, that sometimes they were invited somewhere to speak. They could also make a vacation in the sense in that one place. It can happen, at this point obviously I'm a very small channel. It's not there are many people who are interested in what I say, but if it ever grows, that's probably the brightest side of it I can think of. And this is important. If I ever will make money about this, I will definitely keep my contents completely neutral. I mean, of course, my contents are never neutral by definition. No content is ever neutral by definition. But as you know, I try to keep criticism and also polemical contents pretty much away from criticism. Obviously is there. My contents are very critical historically speaking, but they're not politically, for instance. Even if I touch very political topics, I always if you are a regular follower, you know by now that I have probably I have my own narratives like anywhere else, but I always try to look at both sides of the thing, which is not a form of moral relativism that I really despise, but it's a way of saying, just know that before judging, you should know everything, from both sides, because otherwise you can't judge. This is also how justice works. So with history, I feel it very much, and I realize that's important. So if I ever get paid for my videos, just be aware that of one thing you can be sure: I will not alter this. I will always speak my mind. I don't care if people will want to stop paying me at that point. I don't care. I really don't. I'm not going to make videos just because someone pays me for them. I will not do it. Obviously, if I don't know, if I will deem, I don't know, maybe if a person, I would love to be a kind of consultant for certain, I don't know, historical things. It would be interesting. But excuse me, I made a noise. And but in that case, I would. I wouldn't probably sell my services just to make something completely historically that I despise as it is portrayed. On the contrary, probably if I ever do such a thing, it's to better that content. But generally, I'm not a great appreciator of fiction in historical terms. I mean, I'm a great appreciator I like movies a lot. I like fiction in general. I like literature, like but uh, that's I look, as I said, several flight Schwerpunkt. I mostly like the inherent intrinsical, let's say the intrinsical artistical value of certain works. Not really, if I watch a movie that is historically based, if it has naturally some true historical ambition, it's fine also to criticize it for its accuracy, but it's not that I'm not going to enjoy it if it shows something wrong, if it's still a good story and if it's still entertaining. And I'm not that kind of fanatic that says, I know better because I'm a historian. I don't give a damn actually. And what I'm mostly perplexed by is by how certain fictions actually require lots of money to be made, and that they still suck at an artistical level. That's really the big point. I must say, now since today we're wasting time now, I can also tell you, for instance, I don't like much the series Vikings. Actually, I mean, a bit I like it because it's still entertaining, certain points of view, but I don't like, there is a point with accuracy that is not really a matter of historical accuracy, it's a matter of human plausibility. There are certain things, not just in Vikings, but also in other, that really want to overemphasize certain characters of a specific culture, a specific oh my god, I use the word culture now, I will unleash the mess, but a certain historical context, say better, like in that kind of Vikings, in which if you had with the same budget, you could do something much better in terms of realism. But I don't mean technical realism. I also mean it from an introspective point of view. Is that I think the characters, especially, kind of too loaded, too even too superficial, too sensual, in the sense of that they're not rational. I mean, I don't know how to say that. If I had to make a show on the Vikings, which I love as a historical period, even though I'm not particularly expert on it, I would like it to show the more rational side of the story. I mean, even in that now I don't have time, maybe I will make a video once again, but even in that in that world of the North, etc., there was a great emphasis attached also to the idea of being wise, of being kind of a good judge, being a good leader, based on that, on the ideal of justice, even before the ideal of war. Of the warrior, that there are so many. Also, think about what the Vikings objectively did, even at a logistical level, with their fleets, with their raids, and so on. I mean, those are things that are always overlooked, and of course they cost money to be properly represented. But even when they're represented, there are lots of money spent on there. They're still represented poorly in a general rational point of view, and a plausible point of view. I believe movies maybe do not have to be so historically accurate, but also they have to be plausible in some way. That's the reason why, for instance, I don't like very much, for instance, science fiction sometimes, because I feel that from a, if you want to mix everything up, you want to go past certain scientific knowledge, well, it's fine, but you shouldn't claim that then you're doing a video that is based on science fiction, because if science fiction is a destruction of science for how we know it, that's not science fiction, that's just banal fiction. The same goes with history. I mean, it's not a history themed movie has to be necessarily historically accurate, also because if you want, just know that fiction by definition can't be lifelike. If you want to know history, to think of what history was like, study history, don't watch fiction. Watch fiction and like art, not like history, because those are two very different things. And the point, of course, there is some history in fiction as well. There are historical advisors and something like that. But the point I'm making is that there is also general plausibility of human behaviors, of human attitudes that if in a video you're just emphasizing the individualism, for instance, of these Vikings, this very strong warlike ethos that is also based, however, on just the individual and not what this individual was in the general sense. For instance, just for I've never watched Vikings actually fully, but the few scenes I've seen, for instance, the very beginning, the idea that there is this kind of conservative society that is imposing, this monarchical rule over people who want to go abroad, like in these sea raids and so on. It was the other way around, historically speaking. That's a massive mistake and massive criticism of that society, because actually the most centralized and counter-authoritarian political and military models were created by those who wanted to go raiding outwards, while the guys that remain in Scandinavia wanted to maintain kind of their more egalitarian attitude approach. So, for instance, that's a very first thing they got in the show that is historically wrong at so many levels. Not because you show fjords in Sweden, for instance, that you can say, okay, well, it's just an inaccuracy, but that's actually a mistake at a very deeper level, that really tells you that that show doesn't give a damn about really the setting in itself and the historical meaningfulness of this. It's just, they decided to show the Viking era as a setting, as a background, as an excuse to attract people, just to tell a story that couldn't have happened in any other context. So of course there are so many other elements of Viking history and society that are actually even well represented. I'm not saying Vikings is that bad thing now. It's even kind of outdated to talk about Vikings now. There are other things like Outlaw King and that stuff now, but I usually don't watch fiction. But it's even by not watching that you look at these details and you say, okay, but where's the general feeling? If I were to make if I ever were to produce a fiction like that, I would consider the whole thing from a completely different point of view. I would try to make it, of course I would try to make it entertaining. I don't know how my artistical taste is really about, or my aesthetics, my poetic vein, I don't know what. But I would try to do it something extremely more, absorbing from a contextual point of view. It's a historical contextual point of view. So it's difficult to explain without examples, because ultimately everybody's able to criticize so much, but doing things is a wholly another matter. Nevertheless, I do think that get better can be done. That there are certain things that are out there that, maybe I'm fine, for instance, that there are shows like Vikings out there, because they actually, as I was saying before, give some people something to actually criticize. Even if that's historically inaccurate, you'll find here someone who's pointing it out. So that's positive, because it produces this fallout. But at the same time, statistically speaking, I think very few people care about this form of historicity in the first place, and it's fine. If you're looking for pure entertainment, I don't think Vikings is excessively entertaining, but it's still fine if you want to look at that for that. As long as you acknowledge that that's not reality. I mean, that's not, obviously it's not reality being fiction, but I mean, it's not the right historical thing. And it actually met lots of people who surprisingly believed that that was really it. Come on, what's wrong in that? and that's the interesting point, though, because they don't even realize that, and that's the real problem. Because until you don't know certain things, you can't objectively you can't be aware of them. And that's why it's so important to talk about history. And that's, in a nutshell, what I'm trying to do with Schwerpunkt, because that's really the main objective, is to make people aware. Because, knowing about the Viking era, for instance, it's not just about knowing the Viking era, it's knowing about human beings. That we are. The human beings didn't change in 1,000 years. They were biologically the same exact thing. So, getting history right is also a way to get certain things right about our own world, our own times. And this is quite overlooked. For instance, I detest when I hear people saying things like, "Oh, you have to know history so not to repeat the mistakes of the past." Okay, from one side, it's true, because indirectly, by approximation, you can say, something that happened in history can help me understand what happens today. But unfortunately, most of the people that don't know history, indeed, in a satisfactory way, what do? They basically say, there is a, I don't know, a political um, um, figure, for instance, I don't like. So, depending on which side I get, I associate this to a totalitarian leader at my choice, and I say that's the same thing because here there are so many similarities. The same thing. History always repeats itself. As a matter of fact, history has never repeated itself, not even a single time. And if you get this right, which is a perspective, of course, there are things that repeat themselves in the sense that in pattern, generally speaking. But history is always different. History is always something else. If you buy, for instance, the notion that history always repeats itself, that's the best way to fail as a society, because you think that something is going to happen just like in the past, and instead what's happening now, it's something new, it's something different, it's something that if you stop to the idea that you've already got it all, you've already lost, because the only way you can be up to the task of getting the right choices is actually understand what the contingental factors are. And 2019 is not 1939. It's not 18. It's not 1914. It's not 1870. It's not even 1815. So it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. And what do you do? Well, you just want to sit on your chair saying, "We've seen it all," and do nothing about it. History is unpredictable, and that's why, for instance, strategical analysis today at a world scale have no sense to be done, because in 3 months everything can literally change, and it does change because everything brings to a new, and the more you understand how complex this system is, and the more you realize how you can't stop looking into it, because otherwise you will not figure it out. And history is just the same thing. And however, it is true that history helps understanding a bit our present. Okay, it was definitely fine. Also because, by the way, we always study the past. We can't foresee some things of the future, but objectively we study things as they have at least just happened. So it's immediately past. It's immediately history. So also in this idea, what's history? Is there a present? Is there a future? We can check factually. Obviously not. So also in here we can profitably criticize such statements. So what else? This was just a bit of a digression. So I guess this is more or less what I wanted to say. Just I repeat, if you want me to comment, to make a certain particular topic, this point can get for everybody, just say it, and I will try to make one, maybe just an excuse not to make that historical research that day for the YouTube video, but it still can be useful, I believe. And by the way, I want to thank you again for all the support, all the likes, all the subscriptions. I realize it's kind of, I'm not here really to appease you. It's not that the point. I think I can render sometimes a better service if you disagree with me than if you agree. So that's not really the point. But what I'm thanking you for is actually for the time you dedicate to me, Every day I see how many hours and hours you watch, sometimes even more consecutive days of video watch in a day. And that equates to lots of people who watch my videos so much, so intensively, and so I can say thanks, because to dedicate your time to things I do, not because it's me who's doing them, but because they're about history, and that's really what means to the world to me. And you know, if there is really something I do this for, it's this one, because if I know that there is someone who have learned even just one little thing from me, from these videos. For me, it's that really makes me truly happy, and that's why Schwerpunkt is now also so important to me, because I feel like, after all, there is some, all the regrets and remorses and all the troubles I can have in my life. At least I know that in this tiny space, maybe there is something good I make, something worth to make, and it's important for me. So I don't obviously pretend you to understand it, but I'm still very thankful to you. So thanks once again. So I guess for now the video is excessively long already, as usual. Even when I talk by myself, make 2 hours long videos, and I stop it here. So for now, I thank you heartily. If you enjoyed this video, and this is what I usually say, I found this formula I repeat all the time. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. Otherwise, leave a like or subscribe to my channel. There it goes. Otherwise, I don't remember even what to say, or subscribe to the channel if you're interested to my upcoming content. That's what I say all the time. And for now, I thank you heartily for listening to me, which is actually what I truly mean. And I wish you a nice time, which I also do, and see you next time.